New Making a Murderer webisode. Context: I've been following the Teresa Halbach and Stephen Avery case since the release of Making a Murderer on Netflix. For those who don't know, Stephen Avery was wrongfully convicted in 1985 of a violent assault, only to spend 18 years in prison before being exonerated by DNA evidence in 2003. Upon his release, Stephen sued the Manitowoc County Police Department for $36 million, alleging his conviction was due to the sheriff and prosecutor suppressing exculpatory evidence. In the midst of that civil case, a local woman goes missing shortly after a scheduled auto trader appointment with Stephen Avery, and the same department he was suing is heavily involved in a missing persons investigation, resulting in Stephen Avery's imprisonment, the death of his lawsuit, and eventual conviction for the murder of 25-year-old photographer Teresa Halbach. While Making a Murderer focused heavily on Manitowoc County's conflict of interest and alleged misconduct, I've decided to focus on the Wisconsin Department of Justice and its relationship to Stephen Avery. This webisode is filled with broadcast footage and law enforcement audio that was not included in Making a Murderer Part 1 or 2. Much of this information was only recently released to the public via FOIA by the users over at TikTok Manitowoc. This newly released incredibly candid audio is undeniably damaging to the state of Wisconsin. Specifically the Wisconsin Department of Justice Division of Criminal Investigation, who are currently responsible for responding to Stephen Avery's post-conviction motions filed by his attorney Kathleen Zellner. However, as documented in the webisode, the DOJ and Stephen Avery have been engaged in an intense back-and-forth for decades now. Video summary. +0 Stephen Avery's exoneration and the response from the Attorney General who, even before her DOJ investigated Manitowoc County, claimed that no wrongdoing occurred in 1985 and it was all a big mistake because the victim identified Stephen as her attacker. The official conclusion after the DOJ investigation was that no ethical violations occurred. +348 Stephen Avery files his $36 million lawsuit challenging the Attorney General's conclusion, alleging ethical and criminal violations lead to Stephen's 1985 conviction. DOJ Special Agent Strauss is deposed and asked about her investigative reports. +555 Teresa Halbach goes missing on October 31, 2005 and she is reported missing by her mother on November 3, 2005. On this same date, Manitowoc County calls the DOJ asking for assistance with the investigation. Surprise! The next day the same DOJ agent deposed in Stephen's lawsuit calls Calumet offering assistance with the investigation because she was not a big fan of Stephen Avery. The next day there is a chance of plans, and Teresa's RAV is found on Stephen's property. The DOJ is back on the case, this time working alongside Manitowoc County instead of investigating them for misconduct. +1052 The DOJ played a critical role in all aspects of the investigation and prosecution of Stephen Avery. Many DOJ agents coerced witnesses, including Blaine Dassey, but more importantly, Brendan Dassey, Stephen's nephew, who I personally believe was coerced into confessing to the rape and torture of Teresa Halbach. Meanwhile, Brendan's brother, Bobby Dassey, was protected by police and his connection to torture porn and child porn suppressed from knowledge of the defense, courts and the jury. This tore the Avery and Dassey families apart. plus 1639, only 5 years after Stephen's 2007 conviction for the murder of Teresa Halbach. The DOJ released bone evidence to Teresa's family for burial or cremation. When this was exposed, the DOJ argued they did nothing wrong because the bones released to Teresa's family were not confirmed to belong to Teresa or to even be human in nature. Kathleen Zellner scoffed at this suggestion, saying the DOJ can't credibly argue they gave the Halbach family animal bones. However, the Wisconsin Court of Appeal denied Kathleen Zellner's appeal and accepted the state's argument that no statutory violation occurred because the bones released to the Halbachs were not confirmed to be human, let alone confirmed as belonging to Teresa, and thus the bones had no exculpatory value for Stephen Avery. Unresolved mysteries: the identity of the bones released to Teresa's family. After Making a Murderer Part 2 was released, Kathleen Zellner discovered the DOJ prematurely released bone evidence to Teresa Halbach's family in violation of evidence preservation statutes. As noted above, in response, the Wisconsin DOJ argued they did nothing wrong because the bones released to the Halbach family were not confirmed to belong to Teresa Halbach or to even be human in origin. The Court of Appeals accepted this argument, and clearly states in their denial of Stephen Avery's motion that the bones released to the Halbach family for burial or cremation were never confirmed to belong to Teresa Halbach. I found this to be an outrageous decision and order by the Court of Appeals, essentially telling the victim's family it was possible the state awakened their grief in 2011 to release unidentified bones to them in place of their daughter's remains. Most recently, the Wisconsin Supreme Court upheld the decision. And now Kathleen Zellner is precluded from mentioning this misconduct in any future motions filed in Wisconsin. Why is this such an egregious violation? In 2003, Stephen Avery was exonerated after new testing was allowed on old biological evidence pulled from the 1985 victim. But after his 2005 conviction, the state destroyed bone evidence before it could be tested by new evidence, because they didn't want history to repeat itself. In order to avoid a violation of statute, the DOJ claimed the bones released were not confirmed to belong to Teresa, and thus no statutory violation. The state has robbed Stephen Avery of the chance to once more prove himself innocent via the testing of biological evidence. And now, due to the state's own argument, theories are popping up again about the identity of the bone evidence, and whether or not it's possible the Halbach family was released animal bones in place of their daughter. Plus, the state cannot credibly argue it released animal bones to the Halbach family for burial or cremation. Plus, when these items were inexplicably released to the family, their origin remained scientifically undetermined. Under these circumstances, there is no bad faith. No determination could be made as to whether were human, and more importantly for this statutory analysis, whether they were the remains of Teresa Halbach. Now might be a good time to mention that the forensic anthropologist who examined the bones and testified for the state in the Teresa Halbach case, Stephen Avery trial, has misidentified human remains in another case around the exact same time as the Teresa Halbach case. The victim in that case is Wisconsin resident who, while pregnant, was killed by her boyfriend on November 12, 2005. The state's anthropologist mistakenly identified burnt animal remains as human fetal remains that were separated from Rudy's body and burnt only for. It appears the Wisconsin DOJ is claiming it's possible Eisenberg has done it again in the Teresa Halbach case. NSBP Feel free to ask questions about anything above or anything featured in the webisode. Plus and the state's attempt to manipulate the Halbach family regarding the FBI's mountain DNA results.